I just built my own super cheap watch using parts from AliExpress. It was both one of the most enjoyable things that I've ever done and the most stressful at the same time. All the parts for the watch come in at less than $100, and the specs that the watch delivers rivals just about any watch on AliExpress in terms of value for money. But most importantly, I built a watch that I wanted for my collection. I was able to choose the movement, the case, the dial, the hands. I was able to make the perfect watch for my style. And don't worry if you have zero watchmaking experience. As long as you have just a little bit of patience, you can make your own watch too. Hello there, my name's Kieran, welcome to Top Tier Ticker. I hope you're having a good day. Today I'm going to show you how I went about building my very own custom watch using cheap parts from AliExpress. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, so I'm so glad that I finally built up the bollocks to do it. I have very little watchmaking experience, by the way. I change batteries, clean some dials, and regulate a movement occasionally, but that's about it. I do, however, frequently watch brilliant YouTube channels like Wristwatch Revival, which has definitely helped my understanding on how watches are put together. So I come into this with some basic knowledge, albeit without any actual experience. So if you literally have zero knowledge on how to put a watch together, don't worry, I'll take you through step by step on how I did mine. And we have a saying for this in England, it's called the blind leading the blind. What could possibly go wrong? Something does actually go wrong in this video, and quite badly too. And if you want to see me build another watch, maybe building my dream dive watch for under $100 using AliExpress parts, then you need to get this video to 1,000 likes and I'll make it. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what style of watch we want to build. For example, get a few different watches that you really like the look of, put them next to each other, and figure out an idea of what you might want to take from each watch. For example, I really enjoy the look of the new Christopher Ward 12 skeleton watch. Now, I'd personally never pay the £4,000 retail for that watch, but I do enjoy the look of it. It's mostly the exposed movement that I appreciate here. Skeleton watches are a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. And another watch that I'm sort of feeding into our custom build here is one that might shock you. There's this watch by Microbrand called Undone that has one of the best looking cases I've ever seen. It's sort of a mix between a Patek Aquanaut, a TV shaped case, but a cushion case too. It's mostly the shape of the chunky brushed bezel that I really like here. So my idea with this custom watch build is to try and blend these things I like together. I'm going to try and make the dial and movement look like the Christopher Ward and the case look like the Undone. So now that we have an idea about the design of the watch, we need to start choosing our components and sourcing the parts. I think the main thing you need to decide here is what movement you're going to use. Basically, are you going to use a Seiko NH family movement or a Miyota movement? You can obviously go Swiss too, but with a much higher price tag. The movement is sort of the base of the watch. We buy a case that fits the movement inside, a dial that sits on top of the movement, and the hands that fit on the movement pinion. Now, I do fully recommend going with the Seiko NH family here, simply because there is more choice when it comes to parts for this movement. The more obscure you go with the movement, the less choice you're going to get with parts. But there are plentiful options when it comes to the Seiko NH35, for example. Now, the good thing about the Seiko NH family is that all movements are the exact same size. Indeed, the NH34 GMT, the Day-Day NH36, the Open Heart NH38, and the Skeleton NH70 all feature the exact same dimensions, meaning that parts are universal across the range. A dial that fits the NH35, for example, will perfectly fit the NH72 and vice versa. So this is absolutely the best choice if you want more options when building your watch. Not to mention that these movements are amongst the cheapest and, to be honest, the most reliable too. Now, because I'm going for that skeleton watch look, we're either going to have to go with the Seiko NH38 or the Seiko NH70. The only problem here is that the NH70 is quite a harsh silver colour that I think looks pretty cheap. And the NH38 doesn't really have enough of the movement on show to really give us that Christopher Ward skeleton look. Luckily for us, the NH70 actually has two other colours. We have the NH71, which offers the exact same movement but in gold, and the NH72, which is the same but in a gunmetal grey. Putting the NH72 next to the Christopher Ward 12X, it's obvious that this is the movement that we're going to use. Now next, we need our case. Now there is tons of choice on AliExpress when it comes to watches for the Seiko NH family. However, a lot of them are heavily inspired by your Rolexes, your Omegas, your Pateks, all that stuff. And this is the area where I felt like I had the least choice when it comes to the watch, specifically for the style of watch that I wanted to build. The closest I could find to my ideal shape is this Patek Aquanaut steel case. It does feature the chunky brushed bezel that I wanted, but I'm not really a big fan of the hooded flanks. But this was the closest I could get to what I had in mind, so I had to do it. Now I'll show you the rest of what I got to build the watch, you know, the dial, the hands, the strap, all that, when we come to the building section. But first, we are going to need some tools and equipment to put all of these parts together. Don't worry, you don't need much. And everything that you do need is only a couple of dollars each anyway. I'll leave links for all of the tools and watch parts that I feature in this video down in the description, so let me show you what you need. First, we're going to need a pair of tweezers. I went for a plastic pair so that my clumsy hands couldn't damage any of the metal components. Next, finger cots. These are basically little condoms for your fingertips. They'll stop your greasy mitts leaking debris and oils onto the parts. We're also going to need a puffer. We'll need this to blow every single component whilst assembling, to ensure that no dust gets inside of our build. Now, to keep everything safe, we'll need a watchmaking cushion. This is a stand that has a soft top. It'll keep the movement nice and safe whilst we're working on it. Next, we need special tools to get the hands onto the pinion of the watch. These are basically like little prodders that will evenly distribute the pressure. We'll definitely need a caseback tightening tool. This could either be a ball or a clamp one. You likely already have one of these if you're a collector, but you'll absolutely need one if you don't. And if this is your first time assembling a watch, I'd recommend getting a hand removal tool. If you mess something up and you need to take everything apart and you need to take off the hands, this is the safest way to do it. A gasket greaser tray will allow you to make sure your watch seal is nice and lubricated, basically offering a better chance at staying water resistant. Also, spare gaskets are always good to have. The final thing we need for assembly is some thread locker. This will make sure that the crown of our watch stays on the stem when screwing and unscrewing the crown. Okay, so that's all of the tools. Altogether, they'll probably cost you about $30, and obviously you can use these tools for future builds and mod projects. They're all super handy to have around anyway, just as a watch collector. So let's now go through the parts that we need for our new watch. And I think you will be surprised at just how little you need. Firstly, the movement. We've gone for the automatic Seiko NH72. Next, our case. We've gone for this stainless steel Aquanaut style case that has a sapphire crystal and 100 meters of water resistance. We're also going to need a dial. Otherwise, there will be a gap between the movement and the chapter ring. Now, because we want this beautiful movement on full display, we're going to use something called a dial ring. This offers a small minute track around the edge of the movement whilst also filling in the gap. We're obviously going to need some hands to tell the time, so I've gone with this handset that has an arrowed hour and a sword style minute. But also make sure you get some spare movement stems just in case we cut them too short, which by the way, I did this a few times, so these are definitely good to have. And then obviously we'll need a strap to put onto the case so that we can actually wear the watch. I can go with pretty much any 20mm strap here, so I've gone for this white rubber for that sporty look. So that's it, we only need 5 parts to actually build our watch. So let's get building. First things first, finger condoms. I put them on every single finger except my pinky. Next, we can pull out our movement. Make sure this gets placed on our movement pillow to keep it safe. Now we can pull out the dial ring. You'll notice 3 different sets of feet beneath the ring. These are for choosing the orientation of the dial. 3 o'clock crown or 4 o'clock crown, for example. Obviously ours is a 3 o'clock crown, so we'll need to pull off 2 sets of the feet that aren't needed. Now that we've pulled off the spare feet, the 2 remaining should fit inside of the movement ring. Line them up and give it a squeeze. The dial ring should rest up against the edge of the movement. Once done, give everything a puff with the blower, and keep doing this throughout the build to keep everything clean. Next, let's remove the crown stem. There's a small platform on the back of the movement that you press down to release the crown. This only takes a small amount of pressure, so don't press it too hard. Now we need to make our new stem and crown the perfect size for our case. We do this by slowly chopping it down with a pair of clippers. We'll first put our movement inside of the movement holder. This sort of just friction fits inside. Then let's put the chapter ring on top of the dial. We can then put the case over the top of the watch. Basically, we're assembling the watch here. Try keeping the movement aligned at the 3 o'clock so that we can put the crown inside. We then put our crown on the new stem. This only screws on for now, and we're going to thread lock it later. Then pop the stem inside of the movement through the crown hole. Once this is in place, you'll be able to see just how much of the stem needs to be chopped off. You can either measure this and do it precisely, or do what I did and just eyeball it, and that's why it took a few stems for me to get right. I put 2 in the bin, but 1 was perfect. Now the ideal amount here is where the crown can screw down perfectly. We get a nice pop when we unscrew the crown, but plenty of room to wind the watch, and a nice responsive click when we pull the crown out to the first position. If this is all good, then good job, let's move on. Now that our stem is the perfect size, we can unscrew the crown and apply some thread lock to the end of the stem and re-screw. Don't forget to remove the excess thread lock liquid with either an earbud or something absorbent. Now we get our hands out and begin to put them on the dial. Using the tweezers, put this over the pinion. It's very fiddly, so have some patience. Then we use our hand tool to slowly press it into place. You don't really get a click here or anything, so it's just when it sort of feels tight. Next, the minute hand. Same process as the hour hand. Gently press it into place until it feels tight. Now this is where I personally encountered a big problem. I simply couldn't get my seconds hand on the pinion. I don't really know whether I broke it by pressing it too hard, or the hand just came as faulty. But I couldn't get mine on, and I was trying for so long too. It's the exact same process as the other hands here, just hopefully yours actually goes onto the movement and it isn't broken like mine. So we'll just proceed forward here without the seconds hand on my build, and we'll just have a 2-hander for now. Obviously make sure that your hands are aligned so that time can be told precisely. Best practice is to put them both on, pointing exactly at the 12 o'clock. And this is the perfect time to give everything one last good blow with the puffer before we put on the case. Take some time to make sure there is no dust or debris throughout the movement, dial or hands. Once the hands are on, we can then put our chapter ring back on the dial, and then we can put our case over the top. Once the thread lock has dried, we can then put our crown back into the movement. And once this is in, we can test the hands to make sure that they can freely move around the dial. If you've encountered any problems here, take apart and redo. If everything is correct, we're almost done. We can flip the watch over and put on our case back using our case back tool. If you have the gasket greaser, then apply some to the gasket. Then we can close our watch up once and for all. Now, although I did just put this watch together in about 3 minutes on video, truth be told, it actually took me about an hour to do it. But there is one thing that I am massively disappointed with about this build. I'm a bit gutted that I couldn't get the seconds hand onto the watch. And to be honest, I'm not really happy with this handset in general. I think it looks a bit crap. I think it looks really cheap compared to the rest of the watch. So I am going to order a new handset for this watch and I'm going to put it on off camera. But I'll definitely be going for one that's a bit more expensive and offers a more premium visual experience. Maybe one that has a couple of different finishes and different facets. And obviously I'm going to try and get that seconds hand on there too when I get a new set of hands. Although to be honest, the 2-handed look has kind of grown on me a little bit. And you will find everything that you need to build your own watch in the description. Remember, take your time, enjoy the process, and try not to get too frustrated. Good luck. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, guys.